Welcome to the story behind the glory by OnThree. And today we have the pleasure of chatting with Omar Sanchez, Director of Athletics at St. Mary's College High School. Let's dive in with our guest, Omar. Hey, Omar, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Clay.
Fantastic. And let's dive right in with you. What do you love most about your role at St. Mary's? What's getting you most excited?
Well, I transitioned from being a college basketball coach. I coached college basketball at the NCAA Division II level in here locally for 20 years. And so transitioning from coaching players to then now coaching coaches, it's a different dynamic, no matter the level. So what I enjoy, just like with building any team, is the process that comes with building something. I took on this job because the leadership of the school basically bought into my vision of trying to create a culture there that hopefully allows our student athletes to grow um, as young men and women.
And tell me more about what your vision is and how you go about executing that.
Of course, I think it's important to know why you do what you do. Um, Understanding your why for me is to serve. I took in any capacity I've been in any job I've been in, I've led with serving others, and so for me, it's about serving the student athlete population at St. Mary's, and then in a close second, is being able to serve my coaches to make sure they have everything they need to be able to succeed and be able to mentor and develop our student athletes at St. Mary's.
And you touched on when we first started that coaching coaches is different than coaching athletes. You share more about that with us.
Well, for obvious reasons, the for me, like dealing with a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds where like you're trying to help them get to a place of identity in their life. Obviously, when they're done there, most of my kids were going to be professional in something other than their sport. And so I think it was important for me to instill certain things in them to help them be successful in life. Whereas when you're dealing with coaches, depending on how long they've been coaching, we have a different spectrum of coaches at St. Mary's, coaches that are just hired to coaches that have been there for 35 years. And so you learn to build relationships with people to see what they're about, to see how you can serve them, to see how you can help them, be better at what they do. Because at the end of the day, if we coach, we're looking to get better. So that can be challenging in itself because sometimes, people might feel like they need to protect what they have. And so I think it's important to really get in there and develop the relationships with these folks to help them understand that I'm only there to serve and help.
Share with us some of the attributes that you look for in coaches when you hire them for your program. What are the must-haves and what are the non-negotiables?
Yeah, that's a great question, Clay. I think so. I've been in the high school realm for 2 years now. This is my second year. Um, what I see a lot of at the high school level that I really hope can change, but that I do my part at St. Mary's in changing, is that I look for coaches that are relational. A lot of coaches that I see at the high school level, and I attend many events, tend to be very transactional, tend to be very, uh, very, they tend to be very, they'll bully their kids. The way they communicate, the communication standard of what they got going on is just not at a level that I think is conducive to growth of young men and women, to be honest. So for me, I believe in making sure that you have a communication standard with our student athletes and that you're going to be a relational coach. I think anything that you try to build has to have a foundation of those two pieces for me there at St. Mary's. And in 1 year here at St. Mary's, we've done fairly well. We've won, I think, 11 out of our 17 sports, won the conference title in just 1 year turnaround. Our football program, we brought in a great staff that turned the program over in a year. And if you would have told me a year ago that this would have been the outcome, I wouldn't have believed you. But we went 11-1, undefeated for the first time in school history, and all because we changed the coaching culture from someone that is very relational and understands that there has to be a communication standard when coaching. And I think that just changed the trajectory of the program.
And what have been some of those communication standards that you think are really the recipes for success?
Well, when we think about communication standards, especially with, if we look at, I guess, child development from a perspective of the phases, the elementary, the middle school, the high school, right? And then you get them into the collegiate setting. I think the high school level, when I was at the collegiate level, again, trying to help them find identity. I think at the high school level, I think it's important to really plant seeds for them to really help them grow. Um, the environment that you create is so vital to that growth. If you're in a toxic environment where kids are being demeaned or kids are, um, one of our core values at St. Mary's is respect for all persons. And I always tell our coaches, respect is a two-way street. Like, it's great that you expect kids to respect you, but in your communication standard, that will dictate whether or not you respect them. And so we try to harp on that with our coaches and really understand that when we're communicating to kids, we have to use words that are going to allow them to grow, that is going to allow them to plant seeds. And ownership is so important in group dynamics, that what are you communicating to your group that they're willing to take ownership of what you're trying to build. And like I said, with our football group this last year, I thought Coach Straubing did a phenomenal job of really getting the kids to buy in. I mean, he had 11 seniors, and that could either go two ways. You could have a group of seniors that don't care and aren't willing to buy in, or because Coach Straubing had a vision and had a great communication standard with the kids, they were fully bought in. Obviously, the more you win, the less that becomes an issue. But to have an undefeated season in year one was an amazing feat for them.
Yeah, and certainly going undefeated. Can you share with us, from an outsider's perspective, one of the great transformations that you saw on that team? Was there a moment that you witnessed where you really saw the communication clicking on all cylinders?
So I believe in trickle down leadership, right? From the president's office to my boss, who's the principal, Dr. Imperial at St. Mary's, and then down to me, and then down to coaches, to the players. That trickle down leadership is so important. I'm a book guy. I love to read. I'm an avid reader. And so I pick a book for each one of my teams based on what I feel they might benefit from. With football this last year, I used Chop Wood, Carry Water. I don't know if you've ever heard of that book, but it's about process. It's about understanding that you have to pay attention to the little things, that you have to make sure you show up every day and not be bored with the fundamentals of what you have to accomplish. And so being able to meet with them, being able to have coaches reiterate the messaging, that the communication is consistent throughout, I think really helped in some of those transformations. But to think of a moment that maybe they started thinking, okay, maybe these coaches are here because they care about us, not because they want to use us. I just think it was just over time. I don't think there was one specific moment for them where they maybe thought, it like clicked on. One of the great things that Coach Straubing did, he had a leadership committee. And so he met with his leadership committee on a weekly basis. So to that notion of chop wood, carry water, he never strayed away from these things that were important to him. And so I think over time, it really alleviated some of the tough dynamic issues that they had in the past. And so it brought the group closer together. And so, like I said, they had a phenomenal year this year.
And I'm curious, what would your players have said about you? What do you think the defining attributes they would reflect on and say, yep, that's Coach Omar?
Well, growing up in a family where my parents were hardworking people, my mom and dad who came to this country from Mexico with a second and third grade education, one of the things they instilled in me was to work hard. And so for me, um, I have seen success in my life because I have outworked people. And you know, I, in my, I guess, 20 years of coaching, I would say it would be different because we all grow as coaches. I always use the analogy with my coaches that I hire that coaching is like a smartphone. If you don't update your apps, your phone's not going to work. I think coaching is the same way. You have to be able to update yourself, not only in the X's and O's component, but I read things about development, about leadership, about these different processes so that I can have the tools to be a better coach year in, year out. I would say in my first couple, I would say in my first 5 years of coaching, I believed in working hard and getting after it and competing. As I progressed in my coaching, it was about the process. It was about understanding that you still have to work hard, but there's times where you have to learn how to work smart. And I think the combination of both really is beneficial to really bringing a group together. And so for me, I would say making sure that, you show up every day and work hard is a vital part to making sure that you're at least on the right track to where you're trying to head.
Is outworking and hard work the attribute that you wish high school students would carry with them if there was only one thing that they could take away from you?
I would say yes, because like I said, in this journey of life or any process you create, there is there is no substitute for the work you have to put in to succeed in that field, right? One of the my I use this a lot, but I always say the formula for success and failure is the same. Ability plus effort will give you success or failure. One of them has to be constant, right? The effort always has to be there. What we have to recalibrate at times is our ability. There's people with tremendous ability in life and show no effort and fail. There's people with low ability and tremendous effort and still fail. The balance is learning how to calibrate what field you're in or what you're trying to do to make sure that you can balance that ability to the great effort that it requires to really succeed in what you're trying to do. So yes, I would say that would be an important piece for me.
And I want to go back to your parents, coming from Mexico. What do you remember most about their hard work?
Hard work is not pretty, you know. Both my parents worked. My dad woke up every morning at 4 a.m. to go to work. I remember sometimes vividly seeing him go to a place where he had to go, not that he wanted to go. He had to go there because he knew what he needed to do for his family. And then my mom later in life started working as well. And so for my dad, he showed up every day. He was consistent. Though it wasn't pretty, he got it done. My mom, who navigated the landscape of working and balancing a home, making sure we're fed, making sure things are clean, making sure things are tidy, essentially running the household. I just saw parents that just got it done. There's nothing pretty about getting it done. It's just there is no other option for them besides doing the work and getting it done.
And at what age do you think you began to really appreciate, your dad's hard work and, maybe had a change of perspective of, oh, he's gone pretty early to, wow, he is doing absolutely everything under the sun. to get it done. Was there a period in your age when that really hit you and sort of he became a role model?
Well, so I'm looking to start this podcast around imposter syndrome. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Um, but growing up in the inner city, I was born in Compton, raised in Watts, right? Uh, we grow up with this notion of like, do we belong? Do we belong in different areas, right? Um, as I navigate growing up through high school, I don't think I had an appreciation for that from my father. I was the first one in my family to go to college. I went to UC Davis out of high school, and so I was the first one to leave the nest, so to speak. Um, and so as I reflected on how difficult college was for me, I think back at what my father had to do every day and what my mother did every day, and that even though I might not feel like I want to do this, I have to do this. And so I think I would say it was probably my junior year in college as I was getting towards the end of graduating. Um, I remember having a conversation with my dad, and my dad is a traditional Mexican uh, uh, man who like doesn't really show much emotion sometimes. And so I remember sitting at home, and my dad tells me that he loves me, and this is like one of the few times I've ever heard my dad say that. So at first I was like, "Are you okay? Like, are you dying or something?" Like I was taken aback by that. But he realized that I took what he showed me, which is to work hard and navigate life by working hard. And so as he was seeing me graduate college, I think there was a sense of pride and in what I was doing. And so for me, that appreciation of him showing me that every day, I think played a big part in how I approach things, no matter what it is.
And I know that you were a multi-sport athlete, through high school. When did you get your first taste of leadership?
Yeah, that's a great question. Great question. I play sports in the inner city. You either play sports or you get in trouble, to be honest. I was fortunate to be surrounded by a group of adults that weren't my parents, that were my friends, um, that kept me pretty focused. Um, David Mendoza, who to this day is still my best friend, always harped on doing the right things, always harped on doing the work as well, always harped on making sure you treat people right. Um, so for me, my first taste of leadership, I would say, was my best friend, David Mendoza, who I think he introduced me to weightlifting when I was 13. And here I am, 45, and I still weightlift 6 days a week. And I've been at it ever since then. So I think leadership was introduced to me by David from a perspective of, you know, even though you are where you are, you don't have to believe it. You can overcome some of these things. One of the best things he ever told me was, "Hey, you need to leave. You need to leave because when you come back, we'll be drinking the same beer, we'll be telling the same jokes, and we will be here." And so I always had an appreciation for David because he had the forethought to actually push me to be a better person, push me to represent them in a fashion that they can be proud of. And so those same guys are still my best friends to this day. And I'm really appreciative of that.
And in high school and I guess going into college, what did leadership initially mean to you? How'd you exhibit it, and how did you grow and build?
Yeah, when I was at UC Davis, I blew out my ACL, which turned out to be a blessing in disguise, to be honest with you, um, because I was on staff as a student manager because I wanted to travel with the group. And what I got to see is different tiers under the leadership of Bob Williams, who was there and won a national championship and then proceeded to go on to UC Santa Barbara for 19 years. with him there and Brian Fogel, the coaching dynamic and how they approached challenges in the season, and then being in practice and seeing how guys interacted with each other, how they challenged each other, how they created a standard for each other. I think for me, it was important because I became a sponge. And so two things happened from that situation. One, I realized I needed to work a lot harder to even get on the floor somewhere because I'll be honest with you, I wasn't I wasn't a 3, 4, 5-star athlete. You know, I'm maybe a 1-star. So for me, like I said, everything I've done has always been about hard work. You might be better than me, but I figure out a way to outwork you. And so it really turned that on for me from a perspective of, all right, I need to step it up another level. And then the second thing that it taught me was that leadership has different faces. The way different guys approached it, right? It always started with relationships. Dante Ross was our point guard that year. We won a national title. And I saw him interact with different people in different ways. And so it prompted me to ask questions about, okay, why do you do it this way? Why are you doing it that way? And so, you know, it helped me as I became a coach because not every player has the same learning style, the same coaching style. As coaches, we have to learn how to make pivots to know that this person likes to be coached this way. This person likes to be coached this way. And I think it's so important to understand that not everyone is the same. It's not a cookie cutter approach.
Was tearing your ACL? I tore mine as well. Describe that moment and the rehabilitation process, where you thought you were going and where you actually ended up being.
Well, I'll tell you what, doing that, I think provided me the opportunity to learn more about biomechanics. I majored in bio, minored in chemistry and Spanish, but biomechanics for me, like how the body functions. Like once I was doing research about a lot of this stuff. Obviously, I was doing a lot of PT. The staff at UC Davis were amazing. From the time I had my surgery all the way through the recovery process. But it was tough, as you know firsthand. Like you don't know, like when we're young, we tend to be so impatient because we want to get back on that floor. We want to be able to be contributors to whatever it is we're part of. But it taught me patience. It taught me that I couldn't rush the process because the physician that I had used scare tactics to keep me in line from a perspective of, hey, you come back too soon, you might blow this thing out and you're going to have to hit the reset button. So as much as I wanted to really attack this, I really had to learn how to be patient and just learn how, you know, your quad muscle, as you know firsthand, that thing shrinks so bad. So I wish I would have done some more quad exercises before I went into surgery so that I wouldn't have such a disparity and then have to work that much harder in PT to get it back. And so, yeah, the ACL field for me was just such a setback, but a blessing when I look at it now.
You know, that's interesting. You know, setbacks are sometimes blessings. Can you share with us another setback or moment of perseverance that had a silver lining?
Yeah, you know, during the pandemic, I hired a ghostwriter. I'm not a writer. I was a bio major, so obviously I don't know how to write. And so I've always in my circle, people have always planted the seed that I should write a book, and my book is about, and it's not published. It's still in the works. It's about overcoming challenges. I named it "Beating the Odds Through Faith" is the name of my book, because coming from where I come from, adversity, just like being on a team, is at every corner. We have distractions, right? I grew up in a gang culture. I grew up in a drug culture. You know, obviously my mom and dad were very authoritative from a perspective of like, hey, you don't do this, you don't do that. In our family, this is the way you do this. But there's been a lot of things that have occurred in my life that I believe it's been my faith that's gotten me through these things. from experiencing at the age of 7 and being ran over by a drunk driver, having to spend 3.5 months in the hospital at the age of 7, um, and overcoming that piece of it, right? Uh, at the age of 9, or at the age of 9, my 7-year-old cousin being shot in a drive-by shooting and dying in my arms. Like, there's been different things in my life that have occurred that I've utilized faith to help me understand that now when I think about it, that life doesn't stop happening. How you deal with life is important. And the challenges of life, no matter who you are, you know, we always think money is going to resolve every issue. It doesn't. It just creates different problems. So for me, there's been so many different things, being held at gunpoint and somehow surviving, overcoming and being able to overcome the things that occurred to me in my younger life. For me, using my faith and understanding that I have a bigger purpose in life, those are things for me that I kind of look at now and say, I'm thankful. I'm thankful that someone was looking after me, and someone thought that I was important enough to overcome some of those pieces.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to ask you about mindset, right? Because we all have positive and negative memories, right? And we can put those memories on a shelf, if you will. Some memories can be farther back on that shelf and out of reach, whereas others are more easily reachable.
Yeah.
How do you maintain the discipline to not necessarily rehash those tough moments, but to know that they're there as learning experiences that you don't want to forget, right? I mean, there's a mindset to keep moving forward.
Yeah. And I think we're in a culture where we seek motivation, right? To do something. I think motivation is overrated. I do believe in discipline, and discipline is about finding a way. Discipline is about doing things when you don't want to. There's times where I try to train between 4 and 5:30 a.m., depending on what time I go to bed. Um, there's times where I wake up and my body's going, "Hey, man, like, maybe you should rest." Um, I think the psychology of this is so important because, if they say we have 70,000 thoughts a day and 80% of them are negative, it's easy for people to be negative. That means 56,000 thoughts a day of ours tend to be on the negative spectrum. We really have to work hard to be positive in our lives. And though I've had a lot of things occur to me in my life, I'm very thankful. I like to look at things from a perspective of blessings instead of looking at things like for me. I don't like to have this for me attitude. There's a book called QBQ, Question Behind the Question. And one of the things it talks about, um, are you a why or a how person? Are you going to sit here and wait, why do these things happen to me? Because when you sit in that, you sit in a victim mentality. But when you think about how do I overcome these things? It reframes your thinking to be solution oriented. And then you push forward to overcome these things. Because like I mentioned before, everyone's life is not comfortable. Everyone has challenges. They might be different. They might look different, but we all have challenges. So I think our approach to how we overcome challenges, one of the biggest things I tell my players when I coach is like, you have to learn how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable in life. When you can learn to do that, you will overcome everything in your life. And so I think for me, discipline plays a vital role in the journey, right? If you're not disciplined, you're going to tend to deviate and go other places that might not be beneficial for your growth. And so I think it's important to be disciplined, understand why you're doing what you're doing, and really get after it and do the work, because there is no substitute. There's no elevator to get there. You have to take the stairs, and you have to, along the way, reflect and pivot and figure out how to make it better, right? So I think those pieces are important.
And it's interesting for, those going through tough times. You've chosen, this life of serving others. Talk to me about how that totally reshifts the focus, right? That takes you away from focusing on yourself and on others.
Of course, I'm, I will selfishly say we can't take care of others and we can't serve others unless we take care of ourselves. That's why for me, like waking up in the morning, doing some self-reflection, working out, taking care of me so that I can go out and do what I need to do, which is to serve others. But I wouldn't be where I'm at in my life today if someone didn't serve me, if someone wasn't there to guide me. And so I think it's so important that we pay that back, right? We can't be selfish and get to a place of success and think that we got there by ourselves. No one does that. Everyone has people in their life that has that have served them in some capacity that help them along in the journey. And my bus is full of people that have served me. So I'm just trying to pass it along and help young people, help coaches, help whoever it is I can help in my circles to be better and to learn to serve others. Because when you do that, I think there's a sense of fulfillment when you know you have helped someone get to a place where maybe they couldn't do it on their own.
Can you share a specific example of that fulfillment that you felt?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a, most of my kids that I recruited were from similar circumstances. And so for me, breaking cycles is important in certain communities, right? And so again, doing the work with these student athletes of helping them understand and realize that there is a different way to this, right? If you come from the inner city, you don't have to be an inner city person, right? You can always go back, but how do you make it better? And in order to make it better, we have to challenge ourselves to be better, right? We have to be out in the world and learn to be uncomfortable. So I would say I had a 97% graduation rate as a college coach. And I'm very proud of that because I understood that college degrees would open up doors for the young men that I served, more so if they didn't have it. So having that college degree for them has opened doors for them that now they are in a place in their life where they are benefiting from some of these things that we've helped them along the way. So there's been a lot of proudful moments. I had a young man from Seguin, Texas, uh, who grew up in gang culture. I caught him writing one day, and I was like, "Oh, are you a poet?" And he said, "No, it's like I'm writing to my friends." And every male role model that he had in his life, uncles, friends, were all incarcerated. Were all incarcerated. So he was writing letters to people in jail. And so David was a very good athlete, but he was a little bit unrefined. And I knew that going into the world that he would have some challenges if he did not take a different approach to how he was living life. And so I remember him failing linguistics. He failed it twice. And I said, "Nope, you're going to take it again. You need to learn how to communicate with folks. You need to learn how to get away from your comfort zone." And so he finally took it. David was able to play professional basketball. He was one of my few kids that did play. He now lives in San Antonio. He's a property owner. He bought his aunt a house. He bought his mom a house. Uh, and so those are the cycles that for me are so important to break, because if he didn't do that, then the statistics show that he would have been a statistic himself if he went back, if he didn't break some of those cycles. So I think, again, going back to the work, you have to put in the work with people, because you can't just give up on folks. If I had one downfall as a coach, I would say is I just never gave up on my players. And sometimes that hurt us, but I believe that if I brought you in, it was my job to make sure that I served you in a way that was going to help you. And, the journey's never smooth. It's always rough, and you got to learn to navigate through it.
And tell me more about why that would be a downfall as a coach.
Well, because sometimes it affected the group dynamic, right? Like sometimes coaches believe in you got to get rid of dead weight, and to an extent, I believe in that. But for me, I later in my career, I just became very entrenched in being a relational coach, and it was more important for me to help that kid. And sometimes maybe I put that in front of winning, to be honest with you. And so for me, it was more about them winning in their life than winning a basketball game, to be honest. And so, um, yeah, that's why I would say from a coaching perspective, maybe that's not something that most would do.
Have you ever wanted it more than the student athlete? And how'd you feel if you did?
Yeah, I mean, I was blessed enough to have a mentor when I was an assistant coach, to win conference titles, to be in the national spotlight. Obviously, being at Davis and winning a national title and seeing that and how that happened, you have a certain level of understanding of what it takes. Um, I took a lot of chances on players that, sometimes because of their approach, it hindered their ability to be champions. So yeah, of course, there's times where you want it more, but I think you have to trust in the process that you create and be patient in that process. That at some point it's going to click. I don't know if you've ever heard of John Gordon. So I used John Gordon's book Energy Bus, and I used it every year when I coached to kind of set precedent to. So what are the rules on our bus, right? The number one rule on the bus is that you are the bus driver of your own bus, right? And so just because you're on my bus, at some point you have to venture out and you're going to be your own bus driver, whether you're out at a party, whether you're out in class. You have to understand that you have to keep people on your bus. So for me, it was my job to create an environment that people wanted to be on that bus and have fun with the process of working hard. And what does that look like? I provide that as an example to show up every day. I worked out every day. I was able to get in there with our guys at times. Um, I think those pieces are so important. When you create a process, you gotta, there's small pivots you might take, but you gotta be committed to it, because if you're not, then obviously, the outcome in the end, you're just not going to get to where you want. And success is going to look different for different teams that I've had. Success sometimes is just going to be getting through the season. Injury free success might look like, we had 1.9 scholarships in a league that had, I think 12 out of our 14 teams had 10. So I knew what I was getting into. And so my job was to make sure that we competed every day and produced a product that, the institution could be proud of. And so, we were able to win some games and beat some teams we had no business beating because we had that mindset.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, I mean, having won a national championship, multiple conference tournament championships, how do you look at greatness?
Yeah. Greatness. Well, greatness is always spoken about in a professional setting, right? Like, what are the greats doing? Why are people so great? But I also think we have to look at what people's starting points of life, right? Greatness is going to look different for different folks. For instance, David's greatness, him achieving home ownership and taking care of his family, is greatness to me, right? How do we pursue greatness? Well, it's about being the best version of yourself. Greatness is about learning to be the best version of yourself. That looks differently for different folks. And so for me, I pursue greatness through my hard work and through what I stand for of getting after it every day, even when I don't want to, serving people, always leading with the servant mindset, right? And never forgetting it. But greatness is definitely something that is spoken about in a professional setting, but never really is spoken about um, in a perspective of like a student athlete's life, right? For me, I look at greatness and how they're going to be in their life, not how many games we've won. Because, obviously winning helps and winning is going to provide memories, but sports in general will provide memories, and overcoming challenges and learning how, helping them overcome some of these challenges are so important for their success in their life.
It's been said that coaches and athletes may only remember a few, maybe a handful of defining moments, actual sports moments, in their long, storied careers. Can you share one of those moments with us?
I was spoiled earlier in my career. Um, I started coaching on the women's side, and we posted the best, and to this day, the best record in school history. Um, we were 31-4. We lost in the Elite Eight by 3 points after missing 21 free throws. But the journey with that group, they wanted to be good. They wanted to be great. They were willing to do the work to be great. They were willing to accept any challenge that we put forth. And they were willing to do it together. And then if someone was trying to jump off the bus, someone was there to bring them back up. So I would say coaching that women's group is one of my moments that I really appreciate my mentor to this day, Dennis Jones, who put that group together. And like I said, that year we beat a lot of groups that were surprised that we beat them. We beat a couple of D1 programs. We were a D2 NAIA program at the time, and we beat a couple NCAA Division II schools. It was just one of those years where it was just we expected to win everywhere we showed up, no matter who we played. Not because we had a level of arrogance, but because we knew we put the work in to be that good. And I think that's so important in working with your groups.
Shifting gears for a second, so much of your career has been focused on sports. I did also see that you work for the, Los Angeles Police Department. And I'm curious how that all got started and why it got started in that training.
Yeah. So I was with their cadet program. I was in their Explorer program with LAPD, and I was very fortunate to have, Officer Stinson Brown at the time, who was a great mentor in that phase of my life, who poured into me as a leader. I moved up the rank to lieutenant, though I loved being a sergeant because I was a drill instructor. I got to train people. Being out with police officers on the field in the neighborhood I lived in gave me a bigger sense of purpose. There is a lot of bad in the world. Cops get a bad rap for a lot of things, but I would say the high majority of them are there to serve people and to protect everyday citizens from people that want to create harm. And in neighborhoods where gang culture exists and people are fighting for territory and people are fighting for corners to sell drugs, it definitely gave me it changed my perspective on what I wanted to do. I didn't feel like I wanted to serve in that capacity, because the things that you see, the things that you experience, you have to protect your mind, so to speak, because it can get very dark very quick. And, you know, things that you experience, you have to protect your mind, so to speak, because it can get very dark very quick. And, you know, when you're seeing dead bodies and you're seeing um, rape victims, when you're seeing all those things, it really opens up your eyes to the adversity that life provides for many people. And so, yeah, being in the LAPD Explorer program for me opened up my eyes to a lot of things, and it opened up my eyes to wanting to serve in a different capacity. But the appreciation that I had, I mean, I graduated number one in my class through the police academy, and so I was projected to do some good things, um, but I decided to go a different route. Um, those things that you see are just not. It's just not normal, you know. It's just you feel. I would say you feel like you're in a war zone, and I've never been in a war zone. The closest thing I've gotten to a war zone is gang violence. I was there through the Rodney King riots, and saw those things and how crazy things got. So yeah, it was a phase of my life for me that I have an appreciation for because it helped me instill the discipline that I needed um, to overcome things in my life that I'd been through. So
And where did that initial interest, to even join come from? Where was that spark created?
I remember a police officer at my high school because my high school was we had armed security, and some of those armed securities were ex cops, um, and so in developing the relationship with this man, I wanted to kind of see what that was like, and so it provided a certain level of curiosity for me. Um, could I be a cop? I think I could. I, I just feel like I'm better served doing other things.
If you had to look forward a few years from now, is there another area of servitude that looks pretty interesting to you?
So I'm fortunate that where I'm at now, um, I'm currently still in the coaching world. I serve as the vice president for the Latino Association of Basketball Coaches. It's an organization that we keep building, and we're up to a couple hundred members now. Um, and so creating connections for people. Sometimes we tend to be our worst enemy. So helping people overcome themselves, I think, is important. And navigating the world through relationships is important. I also believe in similar to what you're doing in story and sharing people's stories. I believe there's a lot of people in the world who, similar to me, who navigated through life with imposter syndrome. Um, I would like to create a circle of people that can share stories and maybe help those that are encountering some of these challenges overcome them sooner in their life so that they can see the level of success that they so well deserve earlier than waiting to hope that something happens later in their life.
And is that notion of comparing yourself to others, not feeling you're worthy? What piece of advice do you give this generation? Right, because now there is so much right coming at them, whether it's social media or other, to not just look to themselves.
I think the generation today has far more information than we ever did. I mean, they're one click away from really knowing anything, right? If you were fortunate enough when we were younger, maybe you had an Encyclopedia Britannica and maybe you look up some stuff. Um, but this generation just has access to far more information than we do. I do believe that social media does serve a positive purpose, but it also has a lot of white noise, and it becomes about likes for people, and I don't think that's healthy. I believe that life is about the relationships you build with people. I just think relationships are being built in a different way than we're accustomed to, and so it'll be interesting to see how this generation navigates their adulthood, because it's so much different than our generation, where everything had to be sought out in some capacity. It wasn't on a smartphone where I can just, okay, well, how many miles is it to such and such, or we had to look at maps. We had to figure out the landscape of where we're at. I felt like we were more present. This takes them away from being present. So I'm hoping that people can learn how to be more present in their moments, because that'll be more beneficial for them as they grow than to think they know it. So there is and I really hope I don't butcher this for you, um, but there is a Greek saying that I do believe it's from Chop Wood Carry Water. Um, but let me see if I can find it for you real quick. There's two words that they use, and they're Greek, and one of them signifies experiencing life through viewing something, and the other piece of it is about experiencing life through actually going through life. The generation today thinks they think they know it because they have researched it and saw it online, or they researched it, and so they feel like they are knowledgeable in that way. But knowledge is only acquired and retained as you experience it. And I think there is no substitute for that. You have to experience it so that you can retain it and be able to pass it along. And so I wish I could remember the two names of that. Maybe I'll send it to you, but I thought that was so current, because kids nowadays think they know it all because they've researched it. But unless you experience it, you just won't retain it.
And I want to touch on that with some of the championships that were won, and where some of the athletes may never have experienced failure, right? Because who knows, maybe it was their first season and they got lucky, winning a championship. How do you introduce failure, or how do you position athletes to experience the uncomfortableness which is necessary, right? So that they have some sort of baseline to better appreciate the greatness.
The measure of a person is never in the face of comfort. It's always in the face of adversity, right? I always feel like my job in practices was to create an environment that brought that out of you so we can coach it. There were failure practices that I would have once every other week, because I needed to know how you're going to respond in a real game situation where everything, and I mean everything, was against you. And if you can learn to operate in that environment and stay together, then you're going to do something special. So I think it's important as coaches that we coach our kids through that and help them understand, hey, it's okay to fail. You can't fail at the same thing twice. You got to make a different mistake for me, right? And so these practices for me brought out one, I would always say, who I can trust in the heat of battle, right? If you're going to cause a tantrum in practice, you're going to cause a tantrum in a game. And I can't put that kind of product on the floor. And so it taught them to know that in order to do something special, you had to overcome the challenges that comes with doing something special, because something special doesn't just happen. It's not a smooth line. It is a lot of this. Looks like an EKG machine sometimes, and it's just all over the place. Can you overcome the highs and overcome the lows and learn to, in your highs to be even keel, in your lows to still be even keel? If you can do that, then I feel like a group can do something special.
And tell me more about those failure practices. I'm curious how you would, what did that environment look like?
So like scrimmages, we would do an inter squad scrimmage. We have this drill where we call it 5-on-5 continuous. And so it's essentially 3 groups of 5. One group is waiting, one group goes up the floor. They're competing against the other team. I would always say we are the worst officials in America. So know that going in, that we are the worst officials in America. And so maybe a kid tapped somebody, maybe a kid, reacted a certain way. We would be on them tough about, we call a foul, we call a travel. I would randomly call a travel, even if the kid didn't travel, just to see how that kid is going to respond to that. Because there's a human element to officiating that I think our kids fail to realize. And in this world today, I don't know if you follow much of that, but in the high school and in the travel ball AAUs, I mean, there's a reason why there's a shortage of officials. Parents and student athletes are really bad and think it's acceptable to snap at people. People forget that there's a human element to all this, and there is human error, and we have to be okay with that. And so the toughest part is that the team that loses would have to do a gauntlet. So that was what they were trying to avoid in the end. And the gauntlet for us was a tiering system of runs, where they would do 3 shuttle runs, which is 5 up and backs, full court. That's in 1 minute. They had to do 3 of those and transition into a double suicide, transition into a single suicide, and then transition into a sideline 18. And if you didn't make a time, your team had to start over. So you had to make the time. And so I think for me, creating that environment taught our players that, hey, we've been through worse in practice. The games should be easy. They should be easy. And so I think that really helped us along the way. It wasn't perfect, but it was damn near perfect for me, at least knowing that I was going into battle with guys I can trust and guys that were going to keep their cool no matter what.
And was that a strategy you devised, or had you, picked up pieces of it from one of your mentors?
No, that was something for me. I also have a background in strength conditioning, so that was the hardest thing. So obviously when we had those hard practices, the next practice was going to be a recovery day. Like as much as I knew how to really get into our guys and take whatever's left in the tank, I also understood how to put more in the tank. And so for me, it was about that balance of doing that. I always approach coaching knowing that I have a background in strength conditioning and knowing that, where our guys were from a perspective of like how many miles they put in 1 day. And is it a recovery day? Is it a lighter day? Is it just a shooting day? And so for me, I was never afraid to make those adjustments later in my career. I would say earlier in my career, I wore more my coaching hat than my strength conditioning hat. And so as I got better and wearing both hats, I made better decisions based on that.
Last question I have for you is, do you have a hero, and who would that be?
Wow. A hero. That's a great question. I know many people will probably say, for me personally, a hero is someone that has played a major role in who you are in life. That's who the hero is for me in my life. And though my parents showed me through examples of what that looks like and me inheriting that piece of it, I would say my biggest hero would be my closest friend, David Mendoza, who poured into me like no one's business. I mean, at every corner he was there sharing knowledge, and he didn't have to. At every corner he poured into me, even when I was learning to be a coach. He was there for games and giving me advice. So for me, he's been my biggest hero in my life. Um, but my parents have definitely are there as well, because they really showed me the way of navigating life, which is through hard work.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Story Behind the Glory. Stay up to date with OnThree for our latest episodes by following OnThree on social media at OnThree Stories.